succinctly say, this is why we need to do it today?
We have to do it today because AI is right around the corner. This is an archaic injustice that's been around for a long time, and there's no reason why we should get in the middle of it. It's un-American. The basic premise of America is, pardon me for simplifying it, I was a 6th grade teacher. If you work hard, you should get paid.
Okay, let me ask you about something else. I go to church, and I live in a neighborhood in Nashville where we have a lot of session singers and musicians, background vocalists that are there. Talk about the significance to those artists of getting those pennies on the spin.
It's often, see, when you mentioned Elvis and Frank Sinatra and everything, we're talking big ideas because they've scratched and worked their way to the top. The new artists really need these pennies when they get heard as their career starts on radio, but there's no income. How do they get there? How do they claw their way up to the top with the help of radio? And again, I'm not here to demonize Mr. Hinton or the radio stations. We need each other. Performers need radio. Radio needs performers. But for God's sakes, equitable doesn't mean you get zero and radio makes $14 billion just this last year. That's not equitable. I know it's a big word like gymnasium, but come on, Hinton. Let's get with it. Let's become American.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Senator Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my colleague, Alex Padilla, for this legislation. Appreciate all of you testifying today. Mr. Simmons, I want to ask you about the song Beth, but you're not here for that, so I'm not going to. What I would, and I love that song. I love all your songs. And thank you for bringing my Cusimano constituents with you. What I'd like to ask you, you've been obviously performing for quite a while. When you began your career, there was a kind of understanding that I think was the rationale for this injustice that, well, if radio stations are playing your music, you're getting advertising, more people are buying your albums. Obviously, the industry has completely changed, and the way people access music has completely changed. But if you could talk a little bit about how the industry has evolved and what it means today not to be compensated. That is, I would imagine whatever promotional value you get of your songs played on the radio doesn't somehow create enough recompense to make up for the lack of being paid for those songs being played on the radio.
Well, first and foremost, what you say is so, but I want to cut to the chase, which is when we first began, we were 4 knuckleheads off the streets of New York who could barely spell, read, or write. We just happened by ourselves. We never knew. No one. Artists are not qualified to understand the business model. We didn't have a business manager. I didn't know that once you get a song that goes on radio, radio is not going to pay you to play the song. But they will have the right, I will say this again, they have the right to use our name and likeness. And you're talking about trademarks. You use my trademark without my permission. Otherwise, I'm going to take your house and your firstborn. Are you kidding me? So radio uses billboards across the country's highways of America to promote the radio stations so that people will tune into their station because they're hearing our voice on their station so they can sell advertising. And more power to you. You should be making more money, become more successful, but the new artists are not going to get their fair shake. There are barely record companies left. The entire music industry is in disarray, and all these pennies are so important, especially for tomorrow's stars.
Gene Simmons of the rock band Kiss demanding that every musician in America receive their fair play when it...
At the outset of any career, all those pennies, bits and pieces are so important. It sometimes is the difference between success and failure. There was a band that just recently announced, a band called Garbage, successful. They sold 1 million records of something. Shirley Manson, the lead singer, announced they were quitting the music business because for them it was not financially feasible. There are different income streams. When you play a concert, if you do well, you do well. There's some bands that do better in concerts, like the Grateful Dead, who didn't sell as many records and so on. So every one of those pieces of the puzzle gives a band a chance to survive. And at the outset, as I said before, radio is important. Radio is important for both of us. Radio needs artists, and artists need radio. That's fine. I'm going to keep going back to the same old point. One of those two is making a fortune, and the other one, for doing all the hard work, is getting Zippola. I'm going to say it again. For the new artists, often it's times between, often it comes down to death or life. Those few pennies that radio would pay once this bill is passed, because I don't play with if. This will go through. I know the president well enough. He will sign this as soon as we all put this paper in front of him. It will give new bands a chance. Those extra pennies and dollars and so on will give them a little more to devote more to their craft. And again, you know, this idea that, oh, it's just music. No, it's not. It represents America. They are our emissaries to the rest of the planet. We want to have big superstars so they can tour overseas. So everybody says, that music comes from America. I want to go to America. One of the reasons my mother and I wanted to come to America, I wanted to come, is Elvis. Where was he born? I can't think of a single performer, artist or anything that comes from, I got to go to France to hear, no, I don't, it's like, shut up. You want to come to America, the land of dreams, the land that creates superstars and superheroes. Those are our emissaries. Pay new artists especially. Pay them something, between something and $14 billion, Mr. Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Schiff, you may also want to note that Garbage's best song was "I'm Only Happy When It Rains." Speaking,
you're speaking to possibly the most unqualified person in this room. However, as a voting citizen of these United States, I and the rest of the population hold the ultimate power. And as one voting member, I think all radio stations must pay something.
Okay.
Somewhere between something and $14 billion is the answer.
All right, just one final plug. Senator Blackburn and I have the TRAIN Act, and it's really an effort to try to protect exploitation of the artistic output of products through AI. And I would just like to hear from each, just a yes or no. Do you think we should protect intellectual property, the creative content,
respectfully,
being exploited with it?
May I take
AI?
some of your time, Senator?
To
I didn't want you to
that
say.
it's already 40 seconds over, yes.
Very clearly. In some of the contracts that I've signed and negotiated myself, although I'm not a lawyer, in the interest of full disclosure, perhaps there should be an escalation clause. Smaller stations, you play our songs a few times, it's X. If you're finding out that you're playing our songs and it's really increasing and you start making a lot more money, perhaps there should be an escalation clause for the reason you're making more money and selling more advertising. That's fair.
Yeah.
Have a fallback position. And I say this seriously because since the advent of downloading and file sharing, where artists are actually getting minuscule amounts, barely able to get by. And by the way, I was a sixth grade teacher at a college education. I worked at Williamson & Williamson. I was the assistant to the director of the Puerto Rican Interagency Council, Boricua. You know what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah. The original Indians in Mexico, Magdalena Miranda, it was a government research and demonstration project. And because I had skills, I could type 90 words a minute, fix hexagraph, mimeograph, ad infinitum, ad nauseum. I was making 23 grand a year when that meant a lot of money, but doing the Jewish way, living with your mother, not paying rent and so on. So I amassed a large enough amount that I could support the band we were forming together without managers and everything else. The advice I have for everybody is always have a fallback position, because everybody believes, and God bless him for believing, I can reach the stars. Well, what happens if you don't? What's your fallback position? How old is he now?
10 years old, sir.
Okay, he's got time. What kind of music?
Oh, heavy metal.
Metal. You know what? There's the 10,000-hour principle. There was a book about it. The harder you work, the luckier you'll get, and always have the fallback position. By the way, if it's not a musician, there are managers and other things and personal. America's largest export besides aerospace is entertainment. Our emissaries are our pop culture heroes, and that includes rock stars. The term rock star is not just applied to music, but to politicians. When somebody's really good, you see Mr. Schiff over there, that's a rock star. You're applying a music term to that.
When you want to pass the bill.
When you're using it as a verb, let's rock.
We're going into extended play here. We need to move to Senator Welch.
Mr. Chair.
This is important. Around the world, rappers call themselves rock stars. You go to anywhere in Africa, Europe, it's American culture. I'm getting the kick that says basically, shut up, let them talk. But I'm passionate about this because it goes back to our children. Don't let the future, our children, not have an opportunity to make a few pennies. We're not asking for a lot. You guys are making, respectfully, Mr. Hinton, you guys are making $14 billion a year pre-tax. I understand the hardships of the American tax system. That should be changed also. Flat tax, everybody.
We're going to have to move to Senator Welch. Okay, if you've got a solution for that, we'd like to see the bill tax. I've been enjoying the concert.
No charge.